we waiting on anybody else?
My husband was jealous.
Everybody's here. Nicole's
They
out.
have this, but they didn't have his
Okay.
phones when he got his.
I'm recording, yeah.
So we will call to order the City of Rollingwood Park Commission meeting, Wednesday, September 6th. We'll go ahead and start by calling roll. I'm Chad Smith.
Laurie Mills.
Don Hudson.
Melissa Morrow.
Mary Elizabeth Kofer.
Victoria Johnson.
Awesome. We can go through and public comments. Citizens wishing to address Park Commission for items not on the agenda will be received at this time. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, the Park Commission is restricted from discussing or taking action on such items not listed on the agenda. If your matter is on the agenda, we'll receive it at the time it is considered. Any public comments? All right. Let's move on to the agenda. Discussion and possible action on the minutes from the August 15th, 2023 Park Commission meeting. Anybody have any comments? Melissa? No?
Motion to approve.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Anybody opposed? Anybody in favor? I am.
Aye.
Peter. Approved. Update from Western Hills Little League, Western Hills Girls Softball. Steve, you got anything?
Not much. Season just finished registration. I'm assuming Little League's
Yeah, we're finished.
stance. Teams got put together. Softball's really, I think I had mentioned, we're pretty small this fall. So we have one 8U team and two 12U teams. I'm sure Little League will be smaller, but they'll probably have more age groups. And first games, and at least the way we play, we'll be traveling more. So first games for us start the 23rd, but I don't think we'll have home games that weekend. We're still trying to figure out the schedule. I'll get that email to the city once all that's figured out. As of right now, I think our teams will be practicing. 8U is going to practice Monday, so that'll be, fields 3, 4, 5. That'll be Monday evenings, and then 12U will be on Thursday nights on the big field. There might be some pickup practices this first week or two just to kind of get things up and running, but those will be the normal practice times or days.
What
other
time
than that-
on Monday?
What?
What time?
I believe the coach texted me, said he'd like 4:30 to 6.
And
Since they're-
games are always on Saturday.
I'd say 90% of the time they're on Saturdays. If there's weather or something, or
Right
we're
now.
trying to make up a game, we might put it on a weekday, but normally we're always Saturdays or Sundays.
Okay. I wasn't sure if it was Sundays too, or.
Yeah, I think when I coached, I used to do Sunday games because I like college football better than pro football.
Yeah, I get that.
So,
I'm with you.
some leagues did that also, but I think most of our coaches, they just like to get it done Saturday morning and kind of be done with it.
Is participation down because of the heat?
I'm not, we were down about 8 total last fall to this fall. However, some of that total didn't get to play because some of those were at 6U, and I think last year we had an 8U team, a 10U team, and a 12U team, so our numbers were bigger just because it was spread over 3 teams, or 3 teams, different age groups. So the girls playing is definitely down this fall. Fall's just really hit or miss. I mean, with soccer, this is their big season. Volleyball, this is their big season. So,
Does
I
it
don't
double
think-
in the spring, or is it just slightly busier?
our numbers are about 120 to 130, so definitely more than double in the spring.
Okay.
And we always have age group, a team at every age group. Well, 14U we had a big group age out. So hopefully we'll have one in the spring this year because we've got a lot of 12Us this year. And we'll be working on the fields a little bit. I know Kevin, and I'll get with the city, but I think I need to figure out how to get access. I think you guys had said you had locked up the sprinkler
Sprinklers?
system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll need to try to figure out how to get access because I have to have access to the dirt sprinklers to prep the fields and stuff. So
Okay.
I understand not
Yeah.
giving it out to many people, but
They gotta fix it.
something, some way, some.
Call me or text me, I'll give you the code.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
Kevin's gonna do that. It's- don't
I was
know,
just asking
separate
if the
front.
fences, gates had been done, but we'll get to
New
that.
gates,
But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Nothing new on the maintenance or improvements front? Okay.
I mean, I think I still need to get up there. I was kind of trying to wait for the heat to bear down a little bit and fix the sunscreens.
Those windscreen, sunscreens
yeah.
things, yeah.
But as far as I know, I don't see any major issues,
Okay.
fencing or anything like that.
Are we having any, issues with vandalism or anything like that? No?
Not that I know of.
I know, I feel like a couple months ago we talked about there being teenagers up there at night, or we didn't know what was happening, but it sounds like all that's been taken care of.
Yeah, in my past experience, I haven't seen it recently, but my past experience, vandalism generally happens when it's half school days
Okay, that makes sense.
because the kids get out earlier and then
No
parents tell them to go to the
supervision,
park
yeah.
or something. But that's just kind of the things that I've seen over the years. But I haven't seen anything
I haven't either.
That's
in a
great.
while,
Glad to hear.
at least in my experience.
Purview.
Cool, well,
Yeah.
thanks for doing that, and
All right.
let us know if we can help.
We will.
So
Thank you.
can we add a police report just about anything that's going on, like if there are problems in the park, to our reports?
I can ask.
Or
I'm
just
sure
an
they-
update?
That
like,
would be
at
nice to
least
know.
That would be.
Quarterly of just
I
like,
agree.
hey, are there problems in the park?
Sure.
Just so we kind of stay ahead of it.
Yes, I'll make a note of that for next month and we'll see how they'd like to get us that information if we just do a quick report on it. For sure.
Awesome, well, we're gonna skip number 4 because it's a little bit duplicative and move on to agenda item number 5. Discussion and possible action on a plan to address erosion and drainage between the upper and lower park areas.
Okay, that was my agenda item, and it may be that I'm jumping the gun here, assuming that I think as a park commission, we have a number of things that we are looking at for the park and what needs to be done. But the erosion issue has been brought up many times, and the drainage issue has been brought up many times, and it seems to me that we need to finally deal with this. And we've seen this all over the park. I'm sorry that Nicole is not here today. She did a walk on the trail with Tim Eishin. He's with Eishin Construction Firm. And they looked at what was happening with the erosion on the trail after we had a rain. And it didn't really take a substantial rain for us to have these problems. So, what we had talked about before, but we never did anything about, and I feel like it's time for us to make a plan, is get some advice from a professional to look at all of the park and where we are having these drainage and erosion issues. And I think especially now that they've done this work on the field, and that addressed a lot of it, but I'd like us to see about getting a professional to come in and advise us, and I need your thoughts on this.
Do you have those areas pinpointed? I mean, I can think of about 5 off the top of my head, but I'm curious if those have already been identified, like the biggest hitters that we want to start with.
Well, and I'm like you, I can think of about 4 or 5 myself, but it may be that we're missing some, because I feel like if we address some of these, it's going to make some of
Cause
these others
others,
worse, and that's my biggest fear. That's why I want someone who's professional to look at this. Of course, there's the ones that come from the field house, but then there's also those others as you go around the corner past the butterfly garden. Brian Ryder had built a small bed with some cactus, and I can't remember, I think it was a Sinisa in there or something, a sage plant. But that's about eroded off the cliff there, going down into that lower part of the park. So that's pretty significant there as well.
Yep.
And up above, between where the trail drops down to the police station to the city hall, there's right up here, you can see where the telephone poles and some of those are, you can see where it just, those are all that's holding some dirt there. So I mean, I'm like you, I can think of a lot of places, but I'd like to have a professional look at those and decide how do we address them all, a
Right.
comprehensive
Start with
approach.
those and say, okay, here are the ones we've identified, what happens when we fix these? And then what are the other ones that are about to be potential ones that are super visible that we're not noticing? That seems like a very big undertaking, but worth it.
And so then
If there's
what I
money.
did was, I decided we need to find out what are some good landscape architect firms. So Ted Moss, he's got a good reputation. I can't remember the name of his, I think it's Moss. I can't remember the name of his firm, but I can find it. It's MAAS. Teneyck Landscape Architects, they're really well known. TENEYCK. They're very well known and they're nationally known as well. And Claire Hempel Design, they just received some award for some of the work that they did. Let's see. Anyway, the Austin Business Journal, they publish a list of the top landscape architecture firms in the Austin area, and I can get that list to everybody.
So how does this work as far as next steps go? Do we get bids from them, or do we pay them for their time to come out and look at the erosion issues?
Yeah, I need some advice on that. Or do we even first go to City Hall, to the City Council, and then ask for approval to make this next step? Because we've got to find the funding for it as well.
And do we have to put out like an RFP or something? Or when we decide on
That's a good question.
someone? I mean, I'm wondering if it doesn't make sense to ask the city council about this and then ask for who they'd like us to use, because maybe we could save ourselves some time and energy.
So does the city have somebody on staff that would normally, okay,
Not like a landscaper.
so
Yeah.
normally, if a council member had brought this up, would they do an RFP, or would they be like, this is a one, cause it sounds, I mean, we're really talking about something more looking at all of it, at least so I could see us, one of these might come out for free for an hour and say, okay, I'll walk it with you and tell you what you need to put in your RFP.
I think it depends on if it's just general engineering services that would fall under our engineering contract, but if it would be some kind of other project and it was gonna exceed, I think that it's 50,000 to where you have to go out to do the RFP. So it may fall under that, but there are some other requirements to get bids and different kinds of things. So that would probably need to be something that is requested by council for staff to move forward with getting.
An RFQ, not a RFP.
Right, for like an engineering, right.
Well, if it was a matter of just getting somebody out here for an hour and letting them give us a bid that, hey, I can build a retaining wall here and put in a planter here or whatever, I'd be all for that.
Well, and Kevin, you're going to speak, right? Kevin has some ideas, and it may be that we want to have a landscape architect come out when you're available. Maybe you meet with them as well, so that we can kind of merge some of these plans.
Yeah.
And I can call and see if anybody that is on this list would be willing to come out.
I think that'd be great.
Gratis.
Yeah.
Would it be prudent to go ahead and just discuss the next agenda item so that we could put,
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm kind of leaning the same way.
that's something I put on there, and it is actually Councilman Blacksheep's, proposal for a retaining wall to address erosion in the capital improvement project.
Is that good with you, Mary Elizabeth?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, well, let's skip forward on to number 6 then.
Yeah.
Discussion and possible action on a capital improvement solution to address erosion due to drainage by the field house in the park.
You said just what I would say. Just what I would say. And there's also an attachment there on how this would be done, which Kevin can speak to.
Yep.
And Don, I think you might know a little bit about this.
I visited with Kevin while he was meeting with the people that have quoted this, and I'm marginally familiar with the plan, and makes sense to me. It's just that area of big erosion by the field house, but
Mhm.
And thanks for coming out and meeting with the contractor with me, Don. That's
Yeah.
helpful. So, you know, from my perspective, I completely agree with Mary Elizabeth that there's a lot of problems with the park that nobody has addressed for many, many years. And a lot of them are very obvious problems. The first and most obvious problem to me was that we weren't watering or fertilizing the grass, and that there was tremendous erosion on the fields 3, 4, and 5, and we fixed that. And we did it with private contributions, and I managed that project. And one of the reasons that I did that was to establish some credibility with both the Park Commission, with the rest of the City Council, and with RCDC, because my next plan was to go to RCDC and get some of their money for the park. And they've been reluctant to do that, but I've been building consensus with RCDC over the last 6 months to spend money on the park. And they have about $400,000 in their bank account, and they don't have anything particular to do with it, and they've got $200,000 a year that comes in on top of that. And they've got some projects they're looking at, but their philosophy has always been, at least in the last few years on the current board, is that they should spend their money just on economic development and not on the park. And I think there had been some history where they had contributed some to park maintenance, and that had been it's not really allowed under the statute. Under the statute, they can spend money on economic development or capital improvements for the park, but not for maintenance. So there's kind of a limited number of things they can spend, and they have been reluctant to do any of that, but they're getting there. Okay. So I believe that the best approach to actually accomplish anything with addressing any of these problems in the park is to take the issues one at a time and get them done. Because if you want, the first problem with trying to say, well, we're going to fix everything in the park at once, is that you invite a tremendous amount of debate and controversy over what should or shouldn't be included in the plans and what each solution is going to be. And it turns into a never-ending debate. And that's a good way to not get anything done, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but that's just my opinion. And this drainage issue by the field house is one that, you know, as I spoke to different stakeholders and constituents about the park, including RCDC and City Council and Park Commission, that seems to be one of the most obvious problems, and it's also one of the easiest to fix. It's a pretty straightforward problem with a pretty straightforward solution. So it needs a retaining wall and a French drain. So the solution does not aggravate any other drainage problems. In fact, it mitigates other drainage problems, because what the solution does is it flattens out, the retaining wall allows you to flatten out the surface of the ground west of the field house, and it slows that water down. Instead of running rapidly downhill as it flattens out, it slows it down, and the faster the water moves, the more erosion it causes. Also, when you slow it down, you filter it through a French drain, which is really just gravel, a bunch of gravel, about a third of a cubic yard per running foot of the drain. That rock will filter that water too. And then the design of the plan that we have right now takes the water to the spot where the water is now flowing anyway, which is just to the left of the stairs that go down to the lower park. And you can see where the trail, the water actually crosses the trail, and they've put stone in the trail, and the stone is there to prevent washout of the trail. With this new French drain, there'll be a pipe under the trail that comes out in the same place, and it won't have to go over the trail, and it'll prevent all the washout of the trail in that location. This retaining wall would just be a continuation of the existing retaining wall,
So it'd be the same height?
same height.
Okay.
And it would also step down in the same way that the current retaining wall steps down, which is a few inches every 50 feet or so.
Yeah, I was curious if it was gonna create a safety hazard, because the existing wall is at a height where it's not a safety hazard. But if we
Yeah.
built it up a bunch and made something where kids could fall off and theoretically hurt themselves, that might be a concern.
It's just the same height, it's
If
just
it's
a
the same height, it's just
continuation of the.
18 inches or something.
Yeah, something like that. And so one of the different people, one of the suggestions, in fact, Mary Elizabeth had suggested she liked quarry block better than the fieldstone
Limestone,
on,
yeah.
than the limestone faced onto cement block, which is what the old wall is.
Okay.
And the mason also recommended the quarry block because it's cheaper and easier and it looks good. And the mason that we got a proposal from has been building retaining walls for 30 years in Austin, Michael Williams Masonry. His daughter is married to John Etol, who lives here in Rollingwood, but he said he's built dozens of retaining walls in Rollingwood. Anyway, he gave us a bid. The bid is in there for $31,000, I believe, and that includes all the dirt to backfill. It includes the wall, the French drain, and dirt to backfill.
So when we backfill that dirt, we could kind of smooth out the area up above,
It'll
like
be-
all the little ditches that have
they'll
formed?
be gone, and
Okay.
they'll be covered with
Because those are
topsoil.
safety hazards.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not safe. It's not good. It's just ugly, and it's not good for water quality. It's not good for anything. It's just bad design. So the new retaining wall, one of the things that it does when it backfills, it'll go to the current base of those oak trees that are in there, so that
Okay.
they won't be overfilled. You don't want to fill an oak tree above its natural grade, so it'll grade up to that. And we have this on the agenda for RCDC for next week to ask them to approve it. Now, I've brought it up to them a couple of times, and I'll tell you that our mayor, Gavin, is supporting the project and has asked RCDC to fund
Who
it.
do we need to take to lunch next week?
Yeah, I think RCDC's coming around to it, and I think the size of the project is the right size to where I think they could maybe get it. Part of the issue is with getting their money to spend on the park, there's a limited number of projects that we'll eventually ask them to do, and because once we finish with certain capital improvement projects that we come up with and that you come up with and that we all get a consensus on, then we're done with them and their money, right? And they have this revenue stream in the future anyway. And they've got other tools in their toolkit we can help them with, which, like tax increment financing, districts or PIDs, TIFs, and things that are effective tools that Gavin's supporting and talking to them about. So they have more tools than just throwing this tax money at it. And the tax money is really kind of a blessing and a windfall for us, thanks to Brian Ryder, who set that deal up, because otherwise that money would just go to the state. And the fact is, we get that money now, but we just don't really have the kind of economic development needs that money's supposed to be for. But it's also for parks and park improvements. I mean, we could ultimately, if we wanted to, and something RCDC has talked about, is building a sidewalk down Edgegrove, down to the retail center. There's talk about improving the land behind the commercial corridor on Bee Caves off of Edgegrove also, which I think the city's going to actually take the first steps and start doing that.
So that's been in discussion for years.
Well, council's approved about $30,000 to get that started, and Gavin Massengill has a plan to put some quarry blocks down there and fill it and use it for some city properties as sort of a transitional and interim use, while maybe we see if we can market it for cooperative redevelopment with the commercial corridor, which might take time. But I think, and do some landscape enhancements now that would help screen it from, homes, because Gavin's house is right there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, he has a vested interest over there.
He has to. He's got a constituent that has that has strong feelings about it. So at home, but anyway, there's a lot of things that could be done. But I think that you know, RCDC is kind of, we're trying to get, I guess, our camel's nose in their tent, and so that's why I think this is a good project to do, because it's a simple, well-defined, straightforward project. The city administration supports the project. City Administrator Ashley Wayman supports it. The park maintenance department supports it. We've gone over the project with them. They like it. They think it's a good solution. And of course the mayor supports it. And if we get our CDC to support it, then it'll get funded. If they don't, it won't, because we just don't have the money in the city budget to spend on capital improvements in the park. So
If it gets approved next week, then how soon could it be done?
the masonry contractor could do it within 30 days of it getting approved.
Great.
So if that gets approved next week, and then it would go to council the next week, and it could be done before October 15th. And I'd like to see it get done in the fall, because once we backfill it, if we can do it quickly, then we could do, we could go ahead and get some irrigation in there and plant it this fall. And you don't want to wait till November, December, because if we could catch it in October and get it planted, you know, sod or whatever goes in there, probably sod, I would think, but just to stabilize it, it'd
Mhm.
be nice to do while the weather is good in the fall.
Yeah.
So
So
it's a
that was my
straightforward
next
project.
question.
Sure.
The vision that you currently have is, after this is in place, is to go ahead and put in soil inside to kind of secure that area. I mean, right now you can slide right down.
The soil, yeah, it'll be flat essentially.
And how do people get down from there?
Well, there are stairs now.
And you don't expect the water will come down those stairs?
No, I don't. I think that the French drain that is planned is quite adequate to catch the water. And also there's if you, and I'd be happy to walk it with anybody that wants to walk it, but if you, and Don and I have walked it, and you've walked it
Well,
with
I
us,
walked it
Mary
with you,
Elizabeth.
but where
So,
would you?
so do you, let me answer you. So do you remember the, when you're going from the, I'll call it the exercise equipment area,
Mhm.
that there's a, you can see that if you look to the left of the field house, that there's a grass and dirt ramp that is
Mhm.
used pretty regularly by pedestrians and by lawn mowing equipment and such, and that would stay there. That wouldn't go away. So that would be the natural path for.
So you don't think water will come down the stairs? It seems to me, you know, water, let's say we have a 2 or 3 inch rain. Those are not uncommon. So you think that all the water will go to that French drain? You don't expect anybody to come down the stairs?
I think that the plan that we have is a very good drainage plan that will adequately address the runoff and erosion problem that we have, and will be a big improvement for drainage control and systems for the park. I think it's a real obvious, simple, plain
Well, you
first
put
step.
a lot of work into this, and I appreciate your time on this. Thank you.
Where are the stairs that you're talking about?
The stairs that he's talking about putting in to come down, if you come off that wall, that retaining wall.
I misspoke. I'm sorry, I misspoke.
I'm confused.
I mean, how do
I
people
misspoke.
get down from the field house down to the trail?
Well, right now, I don't know.
There's stairs right over here.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. There's stairs over here, and then over here is where the ramp is that comes up right here.
Yeah.
And this is, I call it an existing dirt ramp up. And this leads right to the gate at the ball fields. I don't see there being a bunch of traffic from right here down this steep hill right now.
No, right now it's.
But there is, there are. The people come from that field house down to the trail now.
Well, if they do.
So do you think there's a need, given all
I
that we
think
have
there,
now
I think
for
we need,
stairs?
yeah, people come down, let me find you. Right now, people leave this field house and they walk down this grass hill and they come down to the trail. They do it all the time. I see it. I'm down there
Right.
every day.
And there still will, and there will still be a path to do that. They can they'll be able to actually walk across sod now rather than walking on the steep. I'm sorry, let me finish, please. They'll be able to walk on sod once this is done, instead of walking on the eroded steep dirt hill.
Are we gonna be irrigating that?
Yeah, it needs to be irrigated.
Okay, I just wanna back up just a little bit about process, and you don't have to
Yeah.
stand there to answer for
No,
this
it's
part.
fine.
But, My question is, two things. You mentioned that RCDC, there will be a limit of the number of projects that they're gonna do. And I totally get that if the longer something goes, the less likely it is to happen. And I do really appreciate wanting, like, all the effort that you put in this. My question is, how did this become the number one priority? Like, I don't remember, we've never talked about this as a particular problem in the park. And not that it isn't, I'm not saying that, but I.
Actually, I brought this up about a year and a half ago after a park walkthrough, that I thought basically a lot of these ideas, per usual, I got nothing done, and Kevin steps in and he's about to try and get some stuff done, but I'm all for it. I brought it up a year and a half ago.
To answer your question, it came up at
Let-
council,
let her finish.
So it came up at council, but I guess that's the.
and I
part.
can explain that whenever you're
So-
ready to hear it.
Great. So what I would like to understand from this group, you can sit down because we are gonna have a discussion.
Okay, and if
with this
anybody
Parks
has any
Commission in a
questions,
minute.
I'm happy to address them.
What I'd like Parks Commission to discuss without council interrupting is what is our process for determining what projects we're gonna do in what order? Because I get it if someone comes and says, hey, I'd like to do this. I mean, if we have an Eagle Scout who comes and says, I wanna put up a bird whatever, you know, that's a small thing. What we're talking about here is not a $2,000 project. We're talking about a $30,000, possibly $50,000 project. I just wanna know, is it whoever comes here first and grabs an architect and proposes it gets to do theirs first? Or is it that we have a list, because that's what I'm more used to, of having a list of capital improvement projects and prioritizing them and then sort of saying, okay, we know it's about this amount, now we are saying this is what we're going after. Because I just don't want us to suddenly be a body that is just reactionary. Because honestly, I don't need to serve on this if that's the case. I don't really want to be part of something that has no plan and we're just doing what council wants, because my understanding is it's really supposed to be the other way around. That things that have to do with the park come here first, we discuss them, we have sort of a prioritization list, and then we send it back. Because otherwise, since we're not a discerning body, we don't get to decide stuff, what is the point of us meeting? It doesn't really make any sense.
Let me speak to that.
Yeah.
So I heard the council I heard the discussion start in council and understood also, as you do, that it needs to start here or at least be brought here, which is why this is on the council agenda as per me. And I like the project, I like what's happened in the park so far, but I agree with you. But I haven't been on this commission that long, so as a beginner to stand back and kind of watch how it was happening, I was very confused because it wasn't my understanding, or the structure of how things were happening wasn't the way I understood it should be. So I also didn't understand why none of this had ever been brought to the council by parks before. I don't have the history, don't know that. So I thought there's momentum. Let's communicate, put it on the agenda here so that we can discuss it. And that is naivete, not knowing what's been through here before. But I think he's got great momentum. I think Councilmember Glasheen has done some very thoughtful, productive things. So I don't have a problem listening to what's going on in council and bringing it here for discussion. I think now it's where it should be, and maybe we can springboard from this into what you're discussing.
I think
or
the
proposing.
problem is, what she's saying is typically it works differently than that. And in fact, I don't know if we could go and look in our notes and find that we actually did discuss, when Brian Ryder was here, getting a landscape architect and getting RCDC money for a landscape architect. That was originally his idea. And I don't know why we have to do one or the other. I don't believe that it's gonna bog us down to get a landscape architect, just to get their opinion. I don't know that doing this retaining wall won't cause a drainage problem somewhere else. I just don't. I think,
your point's well taken. And
And
I
so-
agree with you that we need.
I'd like to seek council approval. I'd like to put forth a motion to seek council approval to interview and recommend a landscape architect firm for an initial assessment of drainage and the trail condition.
Prior to going forward with Kevin's.
Yes.
And could that be funded by RCDC?
It could be, absolutely. And then we can see if there's any other funds available.
You know, one of the things that, from time to time, there have been things brought up about maintenance at the park. And my take on it was that there never seemed to be any money available for it. And so there was talk about fundraisers and, you know, increasing park usage fees which to me are hardly put a dent in things. But I don't think it's that we haven't looked at that or I've been aware of this erosion for a long time, but I really felt like there simply weren't the funds to go forward with it.
Well, and in fact, when
Or any
we've
of
been
the park
working
improvements.
when Donna and I have been working on some of the, like the butterfly garden and so forth at the park, he suggested one day we should address the little garden that Brian Ryder started. And I said, we can't, it's fallen off the whole park. It's fallen down below. So again, I'd like to make a motion that we seek council approval to interview and recommend a landscape architect firm for initial assessment and drainage of the trail condition.
I'll second that motion.
Discussion?
Yeah.
Is this?
So
Discussion, time for discussion? Yeah.
So I would like a little more discussion on this, and part of it is, what I'd like us to do is be thoughtful, because Kevin, I'm not trying to not have this project happen, I want it to happen, but and I'm not, but I think that when you set a precedent that basically whoever comes up and has the loudest voice and has a friend who can do it and all that stuff, it does show that you can do it, but it also circumvents the rest of the system of, okay, how are we deciding what the most important thing that we're doing is? And if that takes one extra meeting where we basically have a architect come in, do a walkthrough, because here's the other thing, I would love to do a walkthrough because I'm kind of tired of doing the walkthroughs that we did for 2 years and have a list of all the things that we think are a problem and have that list basically just disappear with
Thin air.
into thin air. And that's not to say that there aren't more important things that the city staff are working on, because I absolutely think the reason why it's gone into thin air is because there have been more important things than this. And so I understand that is why we haven't addressed it, but I'm just throwing this out there as a possibility. So we hire a landscape architect that at least takes 1 hour. We have our list that we've been making over the last 2 years, and maybe we take a 2-hour meeting where we literally walk and we look at every single one of those projects with the intent of saying, we're gonna come back to this table and we're gonna say, hey, just ballpark me. Here are the 10 ones that we all agree are the 10 most important things that need to be addressed in the park. And here's about what we think they're gonna cost. And can we start saying, this is the first one we wanna do, this is the second one? Because I'd rather go to RCDC and say, we want 200,000 because we have done our homework. We went and got an architect, we know these are all the ones that are most important, and this is what we wanna do. What I don't wanna do is spend $50,000 and have RCDC say, that's all you get for the next 2 years.
All right, can I address this, Madam?
Can I talk,
I
Chairman?
don't
real
really
quick?
think it's appropriate for a council member to keep jumping in. Let the
No,
Parks
I
Commission-
asked the chair a
That's
question.
okay.
I asked the
I'm
chair
telling
if I
the
could
chair that.
address the issue, and so I think that's up to the chair to whether I can address the issue.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So the reason that it came up at council first and why I've talked to RCDC about it is because council has authority to make decisions that for the city. This body does not. It is advisory. Council and RCDC have money to spend. This body does not. So I brought up a landscape architect to council. I brought up a landscape architect to RCDC. There was not much interest in either of those subjects, in part because we spent $31,000 on landscape architects. I came to this body and I brought up landscape architects, and one of the answers that I got from this body was, didn't we already do a big park master plan with a landscape architect? And the answer was yes. And I went and I've studied it and I've reviewed it and I've spent time going through the I actually got the CAD drawings from Nudge with Ashley's help last month, which are inscrutable, unfortunately. And I'll have to say that the $31,000 that was spent by Council and Park Commission previously on landscape architect was a complete waste of money and produced nonsense, in my opinion. So that is why I'm not here talking about landscape architects. I am not just the person who is the loudest on the issue. I am the person who has gone and built consensus among the people who have the authority to actually accomplish something here in the park. And that consensus is with council, it's with RCDC, it's with citizens, and I've tried to build consensus here on getting a project done. Now, my view of it is this body's role is advisory, and you can either say we recommend this drainage project without comment, or we recommend it and we have some comments that we want you to consider at council. Or we don't recommend this drainage project without comment, or we don't recommend it and here are our comments on why we don't recommend it and we'd rather you do X, Y, and Z. And that's fine. Whatever this body wants to do is fine. I think that if this body does recommend approval of this drainage project, that we've got about an 80% chance of getting it done. And then we have a pretty good chance of being able to do whatever the next project is that we try to do with RCDC money. If this body does not recommend this project, it might still get done. I'd say the chances drop to maybe 50% or 40% that it'll get done, because certainly, you know, council doesn't need the Park Commission to approve the project, but it would certainly get more support at council if Park Commission approved the project. So I would ask the Park Commission to approve the project. If Park Commission doesn't approve the project, you know, the odds that I gave you are optimistic odds, because those come from Phil. He was pretty optimistic. My opinion is it drops to about 20%. What Phil didn't factor in is that, you know, I'm putting a lot of time and effort into trying to build consensus and getting something done. I'm trying to help the Park Commission. I need the Park Commission to help me. If the Park Commission doesn't want to help me because of egos or control issues or personality issues, if, you know, people don't like the way that I present things, then that's unfortunate. Those are risks of trying to accomplish things with a group of people. And if that's the way it goes, it's okay. I understand that. I won't have any hard feelings about it, but I'm not going to go invest a bunch of time and effort into getting anything done. And if, you know, anyone wants to tell me, well, we'll do this if you do X, Y, and Z, I'm not going to go do X, Y, and Z unless it's something that I support and think is a good idea and isn't a waste of time or money. I think that hiring a landscape architect or an engineer to look at this retaining wall and drainage issue is a waste of time and money. And it's just something I'm not willing to spend my time or support spending the city's money on. I think that if the Park Commission wants to develop a list of projects and wants to go hire a landscape architect and get some funding for it and ask council for funding for it or anyone else for funding for it, 100% support you guys.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
100% support whatever
Thank
it is you want to do.
Thank you.
I support anyone taking any leadership on any project. You don't have to have wear a hat to do it. So anyway, I would ask that you support this project. And if you don't,
Thank you very
that's
much.
fine.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, can we now have a Park Commission meeting?
Yeah.
Can we talk now?
Yeah. So I think this is a priority problem. I've thought it was for a year and a half now since I did that park walkthrough. And I do think this is a pretty obvious solution.
I think that
Yeah.
this is putting a Band-Aid on the problem. I spend a lot of time at the park and I see a lot of drainage and erosion issues. I think we put this wall there, you're gonna have drainage and erosion issues here. Unless you put it all the way across the park, I don't think you're fixing it. And I don't see why it's a problem to call in a professional that can do a holistic approach to this at all. I don't see what the problem is at looking at the park as a whole.
I think it endangers the project
I don't
to
think it does
come
at all.
back and tell
I
them that
think-
we have to get a landscape architect
I don't think
to get it done.
How would we get money for that?
Well, you know what? If the RCDC would fund that, they would fund this. And you know what? Brian Ryder is on RCDC, and he was the one that had the idea. I spoke to him the other day, and he already said that this is what they're up against. He and one of the other guys, they had already voted on this once on the what Kevin has put forth, but we talked about the idea of getting funding for this, and he told me what the problems were. I just think we need to work as an advisory board. That's what we're here for. We are supposed to be an advisory board and take our situation or our ideas to council and let them decide.
I do think in a perfect world, that's the way things should work, and it comes together, as Melissa was saying, with cohesiveness and doing all our due diligence beforehand. But I think we're often crippled by trying to do things the right way here. We either don't get anything done, we do something halfway, or we spend a lot of money on that park plan years ago, which I think was $50,000 at the time, which was quite a bit of money to spend on that, and we've done really nothing with that plan. So my fear is that we try and go about this perfect way of doing things in a government where that doesn't really work. I don't want to spend money on something maybe that isn't all fleshed out, but at the same time, it is so hard to be on this committee and get nothing done month after month.
I get that. Then why don't we at least have a landscape architect look at this particular situation and tell us, is
But
this going to
where are you
create
going to
problems?
get the funds? And that is going to
Where is he
delay
gonna
us
get the funds for
another-
that to begin
Well,
with?
he has the funds. He's been working on
No,
that.
he's trying to get the funds from RCD.
And what
I don't think our CDC is going to pay for another one, another landscape architect to come out. And I don't know how we get that unless we have some consensus elsewhere.
So
But
again-
that's just my 2 cents, is
I
that
don't
it's
understand.
hard to be on this committee.
I agree. So, but doesn't it make sense for someone, maybe it's council, maybe we dissolve the Parks Commission since we have no, point really of existing, because we don't have money and we can't make decisions. I mean, I really am ready to resign, I'll be honest. That this has been this is so not fun to be on, because the one time where we're saying, hey, let's be methodical and let's actually make a list of what we think is the most important, is instead what you did, Kevin, was say, you either do it now or I'm not gonna help you with the project. Okay, well, if that's how we're gonna run the city, I think that's a really crummy way to do it.
I don't think that's what Kevin was saying.
Yes, he did,
Pretty
that's
much
what he
he
said.
has.
And I would ask for a point of privilege to respond to a personal attack.
I'm sorry, if this is just gonna be a council meeting, I don't know.
Really?
Well, if you
I know,
have-
I'm sorry,
why don't
no, I'm really, I don't think I'm gonna be
Kevin,
productive
I
today.
do have
I'm not gonna be
the privilege
productive
of
today.
responding.
Chad,
I'm
take
sorry.
control of the meeting, please.
I'm sorry, I
Let-
can't be here the rest of the day. Sorry.
Let's continue our discussion. I look at this plan, and I guess it's my opinion, and since it's an advisory board, that's what they want from us. And I look at that plan and I say, there's a good chance that this solves the problem, and there's very little chance that this exacerbates the problem. And that's my opinion, looking at it.
It's definitely gonna slow down the flow of water.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's money well spent, so.
Can I comment on this? I've read that the prior, the master plan, and it had no engineering to speak of. It was trying to convert our park into something that was kind of unreal. And it had all these different ways to think about it, all these different ways. There was no.
It was a waste of money.
Here's the best. This is what we this would be great for your park. It was kind of a whole lot of attractive suggestions, and I went to several of the meetings that were held right here with the Nudge planners, and I think they tried, but as I saw that was never what the park needed, And
It was a
it's-
pie in the sky, something we could not afford to do or maintain.
Yeah.
And it was as if we were a different kind of city. So, I mean,
Agreed.
we can just leave that aside.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that
just don't
is-
think we wanna go down that same path again.
That is ancient history.
Yes, ancient
Um,
history, we don't need to revisit it, we're not even using that, no one's even
So
referring
one
to it.
question, is
Sure.
Nudge a landscape architect firm?
Yes.
Who are they?
Believe
Okay.
so, yeah.
A
So-
very expensive one.
That's my concern about hiring a landscape architect firm, is because I don't want to do the same thing that's been
No,
done.
we
I
want
think
someone that
if
lives in the
anything, we
community.
need to get this done and then have a civil engineer look at the drainage in the park. I think this could be done and then and maybe in tandem with the request for a civil engineer to do a more full-on study. But this would be a way to stop our park washing downstream.
Absolutely.
Right now.
No, I think your
So
order is
let's-
correct. Get this one approved and then
And then ask for a full
ask for more to get an engineering study done of the
Yes.
drainage on an overall basis.
Because once we do that, any other project we have has a firm foundation because we know what the heck needs to happen for the drainage. I think that's the only way we can do anything
I said you just.
in the park.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we approve of
So
this.
the two people with the motion and the second left the meeting, so that ends that motion.
Well, we have a motion in a
I think you
second.
still have to take a vote on it.
I think we need to vote on it. 'cause we have
Okay,
a motion.
we had a motion to hire a landscape architect to review this plan. And everybody in favor say aye. Anyone opposed say nay. Nay. All right, so that motion's off the table. And new motion is to approve of this drainage plan with the French drain and recommend that we move forward with this plan using funding from the RCDC.
In conjunction with?
Yes. In conjunction, well, go ahead, go forward with this, and in addition, have request to hire a civil engineer to do a full-on drainage study throughout the park.
I would like to make that a separate motion.
Separate one?
Yeah, right afterwards.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
Okay, do we have it? We got a second for?
I'll second.
Okay, now discussion.
sure.
Bless you.
One of the things that I think is, having watched this group be kind of hamstrung by no funding, is that we've got an opportunity to just get a foot in the door with RCDC.
Or a
And-
camel nose in the tent, as it was put.
And a nose in the tent.
Yeah.
I think that this in no way negates our ability to hire a landscape and just a bunch of work. I mean, can you do this all in your spare time, Kevin? So it's like, I mean, I'm appreciative of this work, and I see how it is being thought about by Kevin and by, I mean, what did we meet for an hour and a half? And the man that he got the quote from just went through the whole thing. Had some concern about the pipe dumping the water out the same place it's been going, but it's going to be going much more slowly. And a lot of it will be absorbed.
Mhm.
So that dirt below the field house is hard packed. It's down to,
No, that's been my experience with French
Yeah.
drains and how they operate, is that you usually have a much more controlled water flow.
it'll slow it down and spread it
Yeah.
out. So, I to some extent I agree with Mary Elizabeth and Melissa about what is our job here, but without us getting an inroad into RCDC, here's a project that was done with our approval, with their money, and I mean, I see that thing sodded and all of a sudden it's pretty instead of just,
Exactly.
Well, and absorbing water.
Yeah.
yeah.
Also, so it-
And it bothers me that it's contentious, but stuff just is sometimes. And
Agreed.
so, my thoughts.
Okay.
I do hope this doesn't proved to be a kind of a fracture in the park commission, because I think this could let us become a more, not powerful, but a more effective group. But it is true, we've started a lot of things that didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And
99% of the stuff we talk about doesn't.
and this was brought to us on a platter. So I'm
Any further discussion?
No, I think we all feel the same way. We don't like to see any of our
Mhm.
commission members walk out of here or feel unheard or ineffective, but at the same time, all we're doing here is recommending or not recommending. It is council's ultimate decision on if this serves the city well.
What I'd like to see is recommendations
Yes.
that will get things done so that we can actually make a difference.
Yes.
I mean, if we don't have.
Absolutely.
these
We're not
basic
making a
things,
difference, there's no reason to be here.
Yeah, we can't get anything done. We can't even propose something because the drainage isn't enough. So, if we start addressing erosion and drainage, I think we're on the right path.
Any further discussion? Take it to a vote. Everybody in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed say nay. All right, motion's approved. Anybody else got anything to discuss?
Can we also make a motion to
Oh, yeah.
recommend a full-on drainage study of the park? That's what I would ask.
By a civil engineer?
Yes.
Okay.
Not only-
Using
Is that the right
funds
person?
From,
Okay.
with the help of RCDC?
Yeah, with the help of RCDC. So Victoria's presented
It may not be on the.
it may not.
I mean,
It is on, well, the
agenda item
landscape
is-
architect is.
Number 5 is an action on a plan to address erosion.
By the field house in the park?
No, just between the upper and lower parks areas is number 5. So I think it falls under
That falls in
that.
the earlier agenda.
So you're going
Yeah.
back
It's
to-
all right.
No, let's do it.
Yeah, number 5 was Mary Elizabeth's,
So we'll
that
go
was
back
her
to that.
initial
Yeah.
agenda item.
So any discussion on Victoria's motion?
Does it have a second?
I'll
No.
second.
No,
Okay.
it's got a
Um,
second.
I think it's a good idea.
That's
Me too.
right.
There's this thing that Kevin has up here, anyone who's been at the park can tell that is far and away the worst erosion at the park.
Yeah, that's why I thought it was a
Dramatic.
priority. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
we're
this
on
motion
another-
also needs to go to council
Okay.
too first, before it can go to RCDC. 'cause
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
This has not gone to council, so the previous one will go to RCDC.
No, it
Okay.
all, yeah.
Do they all go to council?
So
They all
Yeah.
go to
we're
council.
talking
We
about.
don't worry about where it goes from here.
Okay.
It's just a recommendation.
Well, there we go then.
So we
So
can vote.
we're recommending that
The
we.
city hire a engineer.
Civil
to
engineer
look at
to
the
address-
drainage
Look at the drainage.
throughout the park.
The overall
And hopefully
drainage,
RCDC will
yeah,
work
between
with
the
us
upper
on
and
that,
lower
yes.
park areas with the hopes that RCDC funds it.
Yes.
And I seconded it, so I think we're ready to vote.
All right, let's put it to a vote. Everybody in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. All right, that motion is approved as well. And I'd like one more motion. It's a motion to adjourn.
I'm in.
All right,
I've already told the city staff, but I have, a Monday noon commitment going forward, starting in November, and so, I'm gonna resign